What's up, everybody? Welcome to another video about Godfall. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the future class of video games, Blessing Adeoye Jr., and we're, of course, joined to talk about Godfall by the senior technical producer at Counterplay Games, Dick Heyne. Hello, Dick.
Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm excellent. You know what I mean? So much time has passed since our first video. If you didn't know, yeah, we're wearing the same clothes and everything. Don't worry about it. If you didn't know, there's already been a video number 1 that was all about Godfall and the journey so far, where it was, in terms of what it launched like, what it's like right now. But today, in video 2, we are talking about what comes next for Godfall. However, before we get into that, let's remind you of everything we talked about in the first one, right? First off, matchmaking. It's coming for everybody. You all got it. You're going to be able to get out there, matchmake, have a good time. And on top of that, PS4 players, yes, that's right, PS4 version of Godfall. PS4 players will be able to play with PS5 players. And if that wasn't enough, there is the free upgrade from PlayStation 4 to PS5. So if you buy Godfall on PS4, when you eventually can get a PS5, you'll be able to upgrade for free and get going on that. Is that it? Are we good, Dick? We summed up video 1. Obviously, you worked really hard. You worked really hard on Godfall.
I created all the bugs. You forgot to mention that part, and
I did forget to mention that. You're right. I'm sorry. I apologize about that.
No.
But we're not talking about what has come before. Now we are talking about what is happening next. Dick, where do you want to dive in on what's going to happen here for Godfall?
I mean, I think it makes the most sense, perhaps, to kick things off with the expansion, Fire and Darkness. This is the first ever expansion for Godfall. This was a really exciting initiative for the whole team because it was, we talked about in the last video, we wanted to be very reactive to the community. But, I mean, at the end of the day, to the point that you made, we already kind of had a plan of what content was going to come after the base game, and of course we're reacting, we're manipulating that, we're molding it based on player feedback, but we had to be ready to go. The expansion was the first time that we really got to take a step back, see what Godfall was, see what was working for Godfall, and create something entirely new within that universe and off that amazing visceral melee combat foundation that we built. So digging into the Fire and Darkness expansion, I mean, this is the first time the players are going to be brought to the Fire Realm, and so as a new elemental realm, what was exciting about the world building side of this is Fire is unlike anything in the base game. It really allowed us to take a moment and change the tone of Godfall a little bit. That was something we want the expansion to feel like kind of a completely new experience for the player, both in tone and theme, etc. So the Fire Realm, it's much, I guess I would say, darker and almost feels more aggressive than any of the other realms. If you think back to Earth, very bright, organic water realm. You're like living in an aquarium. Air, again, very bright. Fire
and if I may, beautiful. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, as somebody who I need to get back to Godfall, but when I did play Godfall, that was one of the takeaways, is how gorgeous the game is.
Thank you so much. And it really just is reflective of our incredible environment, art, and world building team. And again, that's what's so exciting about this Fire Realm is we got to go to that hive mind of geniuses, and say, okay, well, now let's do something completely different. Let's take what we learned from Godfall. Let's really hone in on what worked well and what we feel like we're especially proud of. And if there's anything that we think was a little clunky, didn't quite translate to, a melee looter, let's take that stuff out and let's make sure it's not in the Fire Realm at all. So we get the definitive Godfall experience and make the Fire Realm just, be the peak of our world building. And I just really feel like the team nailed it. And I will say also, in relation to that, the Fire Realm in general served as an awesome backdrop for our cinematic department to really go to town. And I'm really proud of the storytelling that takes place across the variety of cinematics in the expansion. It was really inspiring to see those artists push themselves, again, taking what they learned from base Godfall, and I think players will be surprised by the tone that the expansion kicks off on right from the get-go.
So I guess that's one thing to tackle right here. Is last time around we talked about the updates, right? You put out 7 patches. There had been the update. You could get in there for the primal update. You keep calling this an expansion and talking about a new biome. So is this like I'm getting hours of content? There's a bunch of missions. There's bosses. What exactly is happening in Fire and Darkness?
Yeah, it's a completely new campaign. It starts by taking the player into the Fire Realm. I'll avoid spoilers and exactly what triggers that.
Cover your ears.
Oh no! There you go. But what I can say is we wanted the stakes to be high right from the get-go. The second that you boot up the expansion, there's no fluff, there's no easing you into it. We're going to throw you right into the action and get things rolling with a bang. There's obviously going to be a ton of new content that comes with the expansion, but it's really all this content that is complementary to the new story that we're telling in Fire and Darkness. The new enemies, this includes the Flameblood tribe. This is a brand new tribe of enemies that we're introducing to Godfall. These are the tribe of enemies that inhabit the Fire Realm. And what was exciting about crafting the Flameblood is you get presented an interesting design challenge where players are coming off of the Air Realm, they're coming off of the end of base Godfall, some end game grinding, and the question is, how do we create a challenge in a campaign, through these new enemies that is going to surpass the challenge of an end game loop, right? Because that's what the player just spent a lot of hours doing in theory, and now they're going to jump into the Fire Realm, and you don't want it to feel like it's like easy, it's getting easier on them or something. We want to continue raising the stakes and increasing the tension. So designing the Flameblood tribe and thinking about how like what is this comparatively in difficulty to say the Nyax in the Air Realm. That was a really exciting challenge for our team, and I think the results, the output of that challenge is a tribe that is unlike any enemies in base Godfall. We introduced new mechanics, we introduced new systems, so you're not only engaging with enemies differently, but you're also thinking about your builds differently and how to tackle those challenges. The art itself is for the Flameblood. They're just incredible, and they're really gnarly, and I'm excited for people to start to see what they look like. but beyond the cosmetic, beyond the visuals, they're going to feel so distinct and unique to the players. I'm excited to watch streams and see people tackle the challenge of the Flameblood. Yeah. And then of course new bosses and all that good stuff too.
I warned you about this before, Dick. All right.
I'm sorry, you're the question guy. I'm sorry.
Exactly. All right. Don't worry about this. All right. I'll get to your new bosses. But for Blessing, I want to talk to you again. In episode 1, we talked a lot about how you liked it at launch, fell off, but then came back, and you beat the game, right? You went through and beat Godfall.
Yeah, I went through and actually beat. Yeah, I beat all the realms.
Yeah. So then is what Dick's selling here to you? Is that hitting the spot? Is that what you want? Was that what you want to come back to Godfall?
Yeah. No, this sounds super exciting. One of the things I like the most about Godfall are the different realms and how different they look and how totally unique they look. Dick, I think, hit it well where the Earth realm has a specific vibe to it. It has specific enemies. You go through, you explore, it has its own tone. You go into the water realm and it has kind of a chiller vibe to it. It has the blues. It has the enemies that speak to that realm. And then you go into the air realm and it has a similar thing. I love the idea of adding a new realm. I love the idea that it's going to be darker. I love the idea that it's going to kick off right from the get-go, because I think that's a thing that is going to be real good. If you're adding one realm, you want to be able to get people in immediately and get the action going from the start. And it being darker, it being a totally different vibe, it being what I assume is going to be a little bit more aggressive. I'm totally down for that. That sounds super awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Dick, will these new bosses be more aggressive?
The bosses will be new aggressive. Designing, similar to the Flameblood enemies and talking about that tribe, bosses are kind of similar, where we were able to, again, reflect on what went really well for base game Godfall, look at what we wanted to do for the future. And what's cool about our boss design, right, is we have a pretty broad cast of new bosses that we're introducing. And what we wanted to do is, there's one enemy that I would say is pretty grounded in base Godfall. You'll experience it. You'll be like, this feels familiar, mechanically, visually. It's a bit grounded in where we started and what our roots were. But then going from there, once you get past that initial boss, that again is going to feel kind of familiar, but not be anything. It's still new, but familiar. Everything beyond that was a series of us challenging our designers and engineers to just push the limits of what boss encounters are in Godfall. And I can pretty confidently say that none of the bosses you experience in Fire Darkness, other than that one that I mentioned before, none of them are going to feel like what you experience on base game. New challenges, new ways to interact with combat and bosses, and just new ways to think about those high stake encounters.
I'm sorry, Dick, I have a question. Greg Miller from Kind of Funny. You keep talking about new trophies.
New trophies.
New PlayStation trophy.
Yes, of course we got new trophies. And you honestly set yourself up perfectly.
You say, of course. You know how many games screw this up. They put out expansions, they put out DLC, and they don't put new trophies on, and it drives me crazy.
So I can even do you one better then, and this will segue nicely. So what's really exciting about this update, you mentioned at the top here that we have a lot of new stuff coming. We talked about PS4, we're talking about the expansion, but those are actually only really 2 of the 3 components, 2 of 4 if you really wanted to kind of milk it a little bit. But alongside the expansion, we also have a free Lightbringer update coming, right, which we're going to get into in a second. We talked about in the last video, new endgame Lightbringer. We'll dig into all the meat and potatoes there. But what's exciting about having the expansion and the Lightbringer update actually be kind of separate patches, right, because we're pushing Lightbringer out to everyone, and then expansion is obviously exclusive expansion players, there are two
Are
different
you about to say there's 2 trophy lists?
two trophy lists. Two trophy lists.
2
There's-
new trophy lists?
there is one that, of course, will have your traditional trophies in Fire and Darkness of going through the campaign and, you know, kind of what you would expect from a campaign trophy list. But then, of course, on the Lightbringer side, then yeah, everything that's new in Lightbringer, again, we'll dig into that in a second, but everything that's new, we're able to create challenges around that new content, around this new way of playing Godfall, and release a second trophy list. So I feel really good about that. I think it's going to make Sony players just feel really good about the time they spend with both the expansion and going back to the base game. Now there's even new stuff, like more stuff to unlock there. Feels
All
good.
right. All right, I like that. Blessing,
That's
of course,
awesome.
hates trophies. He hates trophies as much as he hates Miles Morales, so...
Oh God, no! I love Miles Morales. So I like it.
No.
It's fine.
We
It's fine.
talked about this. Okay, so to clarify, Fire and Darkness paid expansion.
Right, unless of course you got the deluxe or ascended edition on launch, in which case you already have the expansion.
Okay, and then on top of that is the free Lightbringer update.
Yeah. So the free Lightbringer update is a really exciting one to do here. We alluded to it in the last video. The big piece of content that we're dropping is a brand new endgame loop, which we're calling the Lightbringer game mode. And without getting into too much, I don't want to create any spoilers. There is some nice narrative tie-in for this new game mode, so I won't go too in depth. But it's essentially, you know, if you want to think about Dreamstones and an Ascended Tower of Trials, we've talked about this being almost like a roguelite experience within Godfall, or at least that was kind of the inspiration for those game modes.
Blessing,
I would say,
how's that feel? How's that feel?
That feels very great. I love you said the word. You said the magic word.
Okay,
Roguelite.
yeah, I got you. But then, so if that's kind of what those two game modes were, we wanted to do something very different with Lightbringer, and I'd say this feels more like a survival, or pulls inspiration perhaps from the survival genre, because there's this idea that there's a darkness that is threatening the elemental realm, and that you essentially have to drive that darkness out of it. So what's going to happen in Lightbringer essentially is players are going to be brought back to the elemental realms that they think they're familiar with, but it's going to be completely different because the Heart of Darkness, this thing that we have created, has taken over the realm and cast it in shadows and darkness. And it's essentially the player's job to fight off that darkness by accumulating light, by activating light resources across the realm, and essentially defeating the Heart of Darkness with that light. So it's much more, you're pressed for time, you're constantly trying to gather resources, survive, and then ultimately defeat the final encounter against the Heart of Darkness.
Okay, so it's a game mode. Is there anything else included with it?
Yeah, of course. So similar to Ascended Tower of Trials, where, you know, during the Primal update, we attached Primal loot drops specifically to Ascended Tower of Trials. You can only get that loot by participating in that game loop. Lightbringer will have its own type of loot associated with it, and this is brand new. And again, because it's part of the Lightbringer update, this is free for everyone. We're introducing a brand new loot type along with new loot and new gear included, called Cursed Loot. Cursed loot can only be gained in the Lightbringer mode, and cursed gear is essentially absurdly powerful loot that is locked behind curses, and it will be up to the player to lift those curses. And in order to lift curses, there are particular objectives you must complete. Right, so just a quick example might be, you know, defeat a level 60 Dreamstone, and when you do that, it will lift one of several curses off of the item. And once you've lifted all the curses off, it then becomes an awakened. It transitions to being an awakened piece of loot, and that's when it becomes this all-powerful mega piece of gear. But the challenge of awakening it, right, is while it's a cursed loot, you have to have it equipped to lift those curses, but while it's cursed, it's going to have certain inhibitors that make it weaker. So the player is, you know, being challenged on two different fronts in order to nurture their loot to become the all-powerful awakened item.
Damn, that sounds good. Blessing, it sound good to you?
Dude, yeah, I absolutely adore that. I think that's a really good way of having a player build a connection with their weapon, which is the thing I totally love in loot games, is having a favorite weapon, spending time with it, being able to upgrade it, level it up, and the idea of removing curses from a weapon, sign me up. That sounds super cool.
Hell yeah.
And then on top of that, I'm looking at my notes here. You say you wrote down you have 80 different skins coming to the game.
So, you know, staying in line with this idea of constantly challenging the player and creating, I like how you say it, Blessing, creating a relationship between the player and their loot. We wanted to double down on that, and cosmetics were an obvious route for us to go. We love how our 12 Valor plates turned out, how unique they feel. We got a lot of positive reception on launch, just how great the Valor plates looked, and we just wanted to give more of that. So yeah, we're excited to announce that with the Lightbringer update, we are introducing unlockable cosmetics, which previously didn't exist in the game. There were a handful of cosmetics that players could have gotten from, you know, the Ascended, Deluxe Edition, so on and so forth, pre-order bonuses. But beyond that's kind of where cosmetics stopped for base Godfall. Now with the Lightbringer update, there's going to be a gigantic library of cosmetics, all of which can be unlocked by completing objectives in game. In the Lightbringer update specifically, I believe we have 45 unique cosmetics. And again, Lightbringer update being free for everybody. This is anybody who has the base game. Once you download that update, if you get it on the PS4, those 45 cosmetics are there and ready to be unlocked. And then in the expansion itself, there are an additional 40 cosmetics, again, gated behind objectives that the player must complete. And they, and in some ways they kind of become trophies, right? Showing off that you were able to complete that objective. Some of them easier than others. There's a rarity hierarchy among the cosmetics, right? So there are some easy gimmies that you could probably get within the first few hours of play. And then of course you have your chase items that will require perhaps a much larger investment.
Congratulations. We talked about the journey for Godfall, and I think, the way you guys are committed to it and that you have this vision and the way you've reacted to players like Blessing, I think that's fantastic. This all sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun. We as a development team, I just feel like are really committed to the player, and I think it's a good sign when you have to discipline your folks to not watch streams and to like okay, get back to work, guys. We can't just sit around. But they're that committed to understanding the psyche of the player, I suppose. And it's great because we all start to have the same conversation, right? Because we're all saying the same thing in these meetings, and we realize it's because we're watching the same stream. We're all hearing the same feedback, and the community in kind of an odd way helps align us, because we hear those voices, we all individually react to them, and then when we come together, it's almost like because we're all listening, we now all speak the same language in a way that we didn't without the community involvement. And that's like the beautiful part about game development and where it is at in 2021 and what we're able to do. So it's been a thrill just getting up until this point. And, I will call out, I feel as though we owe the community an updated roadmap now in light of this, because our last roadmap that we put out ended Q2 2021. This has all been the primal update. All of our improvements to the game have been leading up to this. And now the question that we again get to ask ourselves, and I'm thrilled to, is what comes next? And to some degree, that's now we get to wait and see.
Yeah, well, you're going to get a lot more feedback to go through. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot still coming to Godfall when you see this, and plenty of reasons to jump back in, so go ahead and do it. Dick, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for yours. It was a pleasure being here. You guys are awesome. You're incredible. I love what you do for the industry, and just thank you for having me. It's truly an honor and a privilege.
Please, it's been our honor
Thank
and
you.
privilege to hang out with you. Congratulations on the game. Blessing, I'm going to need you to carry me through Godfall. Can you do that?
Oh, I got that, man. I'm all leveled up. You can start off on the ground floor. I'll carry you right through it. I got all the weapons.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, obviously, if you want to know more about Godfall, stick on the channel you're already on. Follow him on social. You can, of course, go follow Dick on social, too. Go out there. Why not? Toss him a follow. Tell him you did good in these videos, all right? And as a reminder, everything we talked about in this episode, like the Fire and Darkness expansion, like the PS4 version, like the free Lightbringer update, and more, all release on August 10th. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, it's been our pleasure to serve you.